So first you got to obviously remove the factory rear bumper. If you haven't, you can check out my other video on that. It's very simple. Literally, it takes about 5 minutes. And once you get that done, you can do this part by yourself. You can easily lift this with one hand. It's more plastic than metal. Set it upside down on, I just used the rough country box on top of a tire. And that way I had a nice platform to work on. I could sit in a chair because there are about 5,000 of these zip tie clamps. So it's like a push clip and then it's got a zip tie on it. And so my thought process is I'm going to try to resell this bumper because somebody's going to get rear-ended. As flimsy as this thing is, it's going to cave right in. So there's going to be a demand for a brand new shiny bumper. So to raise the resale value of it, I wanted to keep the factory clips in there so people could reuse them. So what I did was I got a little flathead screwdriver and a pick, and you can stick the pick in there and push up on the zip tie tab, and then I would shove this on the other side and push the zip tie out while I was applying pressure with a pick. And as you can see, there's about 9,000 of those clips. So that's going to save someone from having to go buy all those clips. So I think it's worth the effort to take it off nicely. And then we go over here to the rough country bumper, and there's absolutely 0 mounting points for your wiring harness. There's nothing to zip tie to or anything at all. So that really, really sucks. But you get what you pay for. This is the most budget bumper there pretty much is. Still though, I don't understand why they couldn't have just put like maybe, you know, 5 or 6 tabs on there to zip tie the bulk of the harness to. That's certainly overkill. I can't even fit my hand between the zip ties, but you didn't have to worry about it falling off and dangling down and looking like crap. Anyway, so you get that off, you're going to come over here, kind of lay it out, and in my case, my Dually 3500 2025 has 6 proximity sensors, and this year they changed the style of the sensor and the plug. So this year they went to a 4-pin, whereas the old years were 3. So out of it, all of it, the inners fit. I can make the middle one fit. I'm going to have to splice and add length to these 4 wires to extend the outer one to reach the outer corner. So I'm just going to cut that, get some butt connectors, get some wire, and lengthen it, just the minimal amount. If you look at the connectors that came with the kit, like they try to extend it, you know, from here to here, from here to here, and they give you like a 20-foot extension harness. It doesn't really make any sense either. So that'll be one of the very first things we have to do. The other thing you need to do is the mounts for the proximity sensors and the factory bumper were actually really nice because it was plastic and it was like a quick connect style. You just pulled the pins apart, pull it out, push it down, and it's in, and it's solid. It's not going anywhere. Well, over here, they decided they'd make these goofy weld-on tabs that are full of weld spatter, so you're going to have to go in and clean the weld spatter out. And then they have M4 by 0.7 thread for these tiny little screws. And I had to run a tap through and chase the threads on every single one because none of them would allow the screws to go in. Of course, you don't want to break a screw off in there because number one, you're probably never going to get that screw out. And number two, what are you going to do for a new thread? It's barely enough room to get a tap in there and turn it with a wrench. So you're never going to be able to turn a new thread into it. So the design on that really sucks. And if you ever have to replace a sensor, it's really going to suck because you're pretty much going to have to pull the bumper off. I certainly wouldn't want to work on those proximity sensor mounts when it's actually mounted to a truck. So rough country, if you're watching this, you need to step up your game and come up with a massive improvement on your proximity sensor mounts and mounts to attach said wiring harness. All right, so the way I was able to chase these with a tap, put your tap in there, and I got a mini 4mm open end wrench. A 5/32 I found would also work, and then you're able to throw that on there and turn it, and make sure you support it with one hand, turn your wrench with the other, because you don't want to break that off. It is a very easy tap to break off. So I'm on the last hole now. As you can see, I've got the screws started and every single other one. So I'm going to get my harness extended, and then I'll plug those guys in. So I got the right hand side of the bumper done, and I extended all 4 wires, and I cut the wires a little bit prematurely because this plug and this plug only have one common wire. Okay, this guy actually only has 3 wires going to it. This guy has 4 wires going to it. So that's a little bit weird, because on the other side this guy had all 4 wires going to it. I'm not sure what the difference is going on there. But anyway, between these two they only have this common wire that's really tethering them together. So for the rest of the wires, you can just split the loom open and peel this back, and then I'll just end up adding some loom to each side. So I'm going to cut this wire in the middle here, and as you can see, now I have plenty of room to move this down here. And I'll add some loom in there, and I'll add some loom here, and all I have to actually splice is 1 wire. So I made a lot more work for myself on the other side than I needed to, but I guess the positive is on the other side, it would have been so tight I wouldn't have been able to clamp my wire up here on top. So I'm going to get this wire spliced, get my loom put on. I'm actually going to open this up and see why there's only 3 wires going to it, because that's kind of weird. And then we'll flip over to doing the license plate and all the lights and stuff. I'm going to save putting the loom, actually attaching it and setting all these screws and everything till the very end, so that when I'm drilling holes I don't accidentally poke through and drill into my expensive loom. And just to confirm, there is only 3 wires in the end of this plug, so it's not like I accidentally cut it or something. That's odd to me. I don't know how these things even work. Unfortunately, since they went to the 4 wire style, that means that now we can no longer use Rough Country's extension harnesses. So these butt connector, splice connectors that I'm using are my favorite style. They have basically a heat shrink on each end to seal any moisture from being able to get in, and then they have solder on the inside in the middle. So you twist the wires together, then you melt the heat shrink on the ends, and that keeps the wires from pulling apart, and you heat the solder in the middle, and that actually basically glues the wire together. So now we can plug these in and see where it's comfortable to splice this. And now you can see we're literally about 4 inches too short for this to have just worked without needing any splicing at all. And I'll run this wire that I'm splicing up to the original loom and then down, because if you go like this, then you're going to have a triangle, and then you're actually going to need to add 3 pieces of loom. I'm going to do my loom and my tape, then pull all this, and we'll move on to our lights and all the stuff in the middle. So what they always fail to show you or mention in the Rough Country instructions and videos is this is going into a thicker mounting surface than the factory bumper. And so this has a very tight window of thickness that it can mount to. In the instructions it says you might have to push it harder to get this to clip, but that's just not true. you're going to have to physically modify this. And so if you look at how this clip works, this piece slides in, then it locks, and it locks with this tab right here. So this silver tab pushes against this little black piece right here. This is like a spring that pushes down, and then there's a lip, or there's a channel here. So on this side you can see it better. There's this little lip that pushes against. So we need to slide this out so that we can mount in our thicker piece of metal. And to do that, we need to pull this piece out, and I'm going to trim off. You can see there's kind of two bends. There's a bend on top, so this piece is flat, and it bends and it starts going down, and then it bends right here and it flattens back out so that this piece here and this piece are parallel. I'm going to cut just this piece off right here, this flat piece, up to that first bend on both tabs. So I already have one pulled out. So if we're looking at from the back side, you can see we have two bends, one here and one here. And we're just going to trim this off up to that first bend. I'm going to plug it back in, I'm going to put it in the bumper, and I'm going to see if that's enough to make it fit. You take off too much, then it's going to be sloppy. So you definitely don't want to take off too much. Alright, and so there you can see it just barely took a little bit off. It doesn't take much to cut through it at all. So there we've got it installed, and now this slides out a little bit further. So now with the modified side, we should actually feel this click into place and see it. And that is nice and tight. So that is exactly how much we want to cut off. And you can see on this side, it doesn't matter how hard you push or if you pry. It's a very simple system. You have to have this be able to slide back enough for this thickness. So we will pop this out and modify the other side. And I'll just mention to you, if you watch, I know there's a rough country installation video, and they say that they push this in, and if you watch the video closely, as soon as he takes his hands off it, it falls back out because they didn't modify that like you need to. Yeah, I figure it's probably a good idea to give you a shot of after and before, so you know exactly how much you need to take off. And now you can see the clips are actually all the way on past this surface. I'm going to show you, because I cut at an angle and I cut just a hair too much off this side. This side is perfect. So you see how this side can slide, but this one's gripping really tight. If you cut too much off, you're going to get that kind of slop. My modification for the license plate is pretty simple, but it's a multi-step process. So I'm going to be putting in what they call a riv nut, or a rivet nut. And to do that, I have to drill these holes out larger. And I have to drill them out so that this nut very tightly fits inside that hole, so that we can clamp it just like a rivet. But before we can do that, we need to do two things. We need to deburr our hole, so I have a deburring countersink tool. So we're just going to lightly hit each side. We'll flip it over. We'll get the back side. Then I'm going to hit the holes with some paint so they don't rust, since that's bare steel now. Then we come in with our rivet nut tool. The nice thing about this is we can actually, with this one, we can flip it over and look on the back side and make sure that we are getting a proper amount of squish. This modification is going to allow us to simply run a bolt and to mount our license plate instead of having to cut wires and remove an entire light just to get your license plate off. Because that seems pretty silly to me that you'd have to remove lights and cut wires just to swap your license plate. So now, throw your license plate on there, and we'll just put 2 M6 bolts in there to put our plate on. But the modifications don't end there. We still need to put our license plate lights in. So we're going to drill. I'm going to start by drilling just one hole over here. And we're going to install our light, turn the lights out, and wire this just to a 12-volt battery and see if that projects enough light that we're satisfied with. Otherwise, I can come over here. It's really tight, but I can come over right here to this spot and put another light. I just really don't like the idea of accidentally bumping that light all the time with the trailer plug. Another modification is I'm going to put this quick connect for compressed air over here where the trailer camera plug used to be, and the trailer camera plug is going to get relocated to the bed because there's no reason for that to be on a bumper for a 40-foot trailer. Obviously it's going to be a gooseneck. I think that's an oversight on Dodge's part. This guy, all I got to do is drill a 3/4 inch hole where I want this, and it just bolts right on. I'm going to wait to install the lights because I'm going to do the wiring for like 6 different projects all at once on the truck. I don't want to crawl under and run wire up to the battery 6 different times. I'm going to combine everything, do it all at once, put it in one nice big fat wiring loom. That way everything's together and I'm only going under there and routing and zip tying things once. Now I did end up wiring in both lights because you get rid of one, it's going to be questionable if you can see the other side of the plate. And when I read the law, basically says you have to be able to see the license plate clearly from so many feet back. And if I don't have that, they could argue that they wouldn't be able to see this side of the plate. So I just put both lights in. It's not that big of a deal. All right, so we're getting close to the end. Got this guy in, and I can live with that amount of wiggle. I just wish, take my advice and cut those clips very slowly and carefully and evenly, because I actually cut this side at an angle I saw when I looked closer. And had I cut it like this side, it would be totally solid. Just my OCD driving me nuts there, though. Got my lights bolted in. License plate, as you can see, just an M6 bolt. Very simple. And so now I'm going to show you how this guy works. So when you plug in an air coupler, it moves this black part forward, and that gives you enough room. You have to put your wrench on this shiny part, not the black part. The black part spins independent. I put a JIC cap on because I'm not going to be actually routing my air to this for a while. But I'm going to put this on. It just goes like that. And you're going to need a cheapo wrench, like a Harbor Freight cheapo wrench, so it's thinner, so that it'll fit between this black part. And this still might not even be thin enough. And then this nut goes on the back side. So the nut on the back side will use a 1-inch wrench. And then the front would be a 19mm or 3/4. And sure enough, you tighten it up and then that locks the front wrench in. So you're going to have a really skinny wrench. I have a feeling we're not going to actually need a wrench on the front, however. I think just the wrench on the back side will be good enough. And I do want to snug this about as good as I can get it, because I don't ever want to be crawling back there to put that puppy back on. Now that's tight on the back side, so you just push the black part down and the coupler automatically comes out. So now I can take the rubber grommet, that'll kind of cover up the paint. And so, man, the air conditioner kicks on at the worst time every time. So now you put your tool in, it pops out and it automatically locks. And then to take it out, you just push down on the black part and see it pops out. It's pretty cool. I'll leave a link in the description. That's from ARB. And then I got a cap. Now they do make a cap, a dust cap for this, and it is an absolutely ridiculously overpriced piece. It's like $6 or $7 for this piece. That goes on the back, so it actually has a lip in there that it seals on, and it's got a lip on the front that it seals on. So that'll keep the dirt and dust and water. And it looks great, but the coupler itself is about 13 bucks, 13 to 16, and then this cap is 6 or 7. And you know, honestly, this whole coupler is probably worth 20 just by itself. But the fact that they have to mark this little, 20-cent piece of rubber up to $7 is just beyond me. So there's installed, push down the black part, comes out, put your cap on, and hopefully nobody comes along and steals your air while you're parked. So now I'm going to flip it over and we'll install the wiring loom. We'll get that tied up, wire in our tail lights, and then we'll head over to the truck to actually bolt it on. And here we are with the wiring installed. So I just wanted to give you a real quick shot of all this. See, I added in my own loom here on this side. So I only ended up having to add one of these, but this is a clamp. You can get them at the hardware store. And since they have this step here, this tread plate with a bolt nut going through, I was able to secure that guy nicely there. Otherwise, since we're not using these bolts on the 25 and ups, I was able to zip tie there, zip tied the light wire together there, zip tied this not used cable so that when it flail around, they have these two mounts welded on for the trailer TPMS receiver. So I zip tied to those. The push connector on there actually pushed in and locked in, but I threw a zip tie on just for extra insurance. Then coming down here, just one more zip tie. All that is actually kind of, there comes that air conditioner again, just because I started recording. This kind of aims that way naturally, so that kind of worked out in my favor. Put two zip ties around this because again we're not using these holes, and then went through this hole. Got my two proximity sensors, and I'm going to wait until we get this in the truck to figure out where this is going to go, or if I'm just going to zip tie the heck out of it, or what I'm going to do, because this is the clearance for this guy. And so I don't know how close, I don't know how much clearance I have here, or if I'm going to have to actually move that or what. So I'm going to get this mounted on the truck, but other than that, it's pretty much zip tie that master plug somewhere safe and then plug her in and we're done. Now the cool thing that I learned is if you do have the trailer camera, they have this plug. I don't know why, but they have a plug on the loom that you can plug your quick connector into to seal it off. So basically, since I'm not going to be cutting the hole in the bed for this till a later date, now that's sealed up, that's safe. I can just kind of zip tie it to the frame out of harm's way, and then I can come back to this at a future date and finish that project later. I don't got to worry about that plug getting full of dirt and getting destroyed. All right, so the moment of truth. Got the bumper bolted on. And before, you had this tiny little corner of bumper over here to step on. And I'd literally have to pick my leg up and then just hope I didn't slip and fall off. And try not to kick the bed and put a dent in it, screw up my paint. Gone are those days. Even with this bumper though, it's got a nice corner step, but it's still reach up there. And if you're going to lift the truck, put bigger tires on it, it's still going to be a pretty good climb up. Getting down, you might find it's good enough. And then we got the factory flip out bumper. So this video proves this bumper works with this step, because Rough Country couldn't answer that for me. And again, this step is okay for climbing into bed if it's infrequent. It's okay for climbing out. But what if we use both like stairs? Right foot, left foot. Wow. That is effortless. It's amazing. I feel very sure-footed. Beats the heck out of what I just came from with having to step all the way up on this tiny little lip to get in. I don't know what the hell Dodge was thinking, putting these bumpers on these trucks for this long. 2009 to 2025, and we're still living in the dark ages of having this crappy non-step bumper on these trucks. So go out and get yourself a Rough Country bumper, or any bumper for that matter, with a step built in. Working out of the bed of your truck is going to be so much easier. Alright, so the bumper went on, no issues. Our lights work. I'm going to crawl under here and show you how I connected everything. Move the step forward. So I did end up putting one of these clamps to the step bolt to hold the wiring up close. And then under here, the quick connector I set on top of this brace for the bumper step, and I zip tied the heck out of it to there. If the slot was vertical instead of horizontal, this slot is actually the right size for the push connector on this guy, and then you could just quick connect it into this step. So it's unfortunate we're so close yet so far away that that notch has to be rotated 90 if that was going to work, because with this piece angling out and this bolt head here, you wouldn't be able to stick it on there like that. But it's not too bad. Zip tie that up there, and then I'll show you the other side, but I would actually probably prefer to route these wires above the kick out for your step. So here we are on the passenger side, right hand side, and you can see I sent the wires up towards the top, and that actually works much better because now it keeps things free, and you don't have to worry about weeds coming up and ripping on those wires. And there is actually plenty of room up top for those wires to sit on top of this step kick out. I guess while I'm down here, I'll also mention there was no problems with installing the bumper with our trailer plug already connected. I know in one of the other installation videos I watched, they said you had to plug this in after you put the step on. I didn't have that problem at all. So here we are on top, and you can't see those wires really on top of the step kick out. So I would route your wires up and then use this guy to clamp your wires up to the top of the bumper.